Good morning, everybody. It's a great morning. We got a cloudy day. There's some blue up there, not much, but it's a great day. I'm going to sit in another swing. I have my choice of swings. Just picked up another one yesterday. Oh. Went to sleep last night. Kind of perplexed over a few things. One of the videos I had put up the other day sparked a comment that really got me thinking. Cat's doing his best to get me in a playful mood. Guy sent me a comment, and it was, he thought I was a nice guy and everything, but he thought that I had bought into a passive teaching in Christ, and he went on to explain how the Bible was altered by the Roman Catholic Church to make us all passive and basically be sheeple so they can control us. Not verbatim, not exact words. In fact, if I think about it, I could copy what he said and put it in down below in the comments. It got me thinking about deeper thinking of our seeking to God and the nuts and bolts of the thing we always try to. As a deeper thinker of Christ, we all tend to get off into the nuts and bolts of God more so than what the nuts and bolts do for us. You could take an elevator, for instance, and if we wanted to study the inner workings of the elevator, the emergency brake system, and the electrical panels and switches and relays that it takes to make an elevator safe today. And if we really got off into that, we could spend a lifetime becoming a certified Otis elevator repairman. And we would really not think about too much about how many lifts and rides we've taken on elevators in order for us to do that very thing. Sometimes you're better off just riding the elevator and not really thinking about the nuts and bolts too much. If you feel led to do that, I'm sure there's some people that have to figure out the inner workings of things. It's like the Watchmen. It's my understanding they understood inner workings of the world and the story of people and the origin and the beginning and the conclusion and the purpose. But the garden itself of earth, the people, they didn't seem to have to know all that for the purpose of this world, to partake in it. There's a lot of smart people today. Kids today have more benefits of the ability to stand on the shoulders of them that came before them than any generation has ever been on this earth, I believe. Can't speak for the ages before this one, but for this age, people are very tapped in to knowledge. In the old days, the shoulders that you stood upon was maybe your father. Let's say 100 years ago he was a blacksmith, and as a kid of a blacksmith, you were bound to watch a lifetime, your young lifetime of Dad working the blacksmith tools and how to heat up metal, how to bend it, and how to shape it. Later in life, you could stand on his shoulders, even after he was dead and gone, and you could benefit everything that you learned from him, that you had access to, his knowledge, and you could become a blacksmith yourself if you so choose. And we accomplish things by standing on the shoulders of them that come before us. Well, today, with the internet, for all its blessings and all its curses, it is a vast, huge vat, or pit, I should call it, of knowledge. So when you find a young person that's a seeker of God, given all the knowledge that is in that pit of the internet, they get extremely, extremely smart, and probably too smart. I talk to a good friend of mine online all the time about spiritual things and the evolution of my spirit, and probably his spirit. And we come to conclusions all the time. Or I should say we look at this very thing I'm talking about, growing our soul and spirit, knowledge, what we partake of, and then they come before us. And I kind of came up with an idea or an image, and it was an image of an old dirt farmer back in the old days. Let's say he's working a plow every day. He's wearing some old burnout overalls that are so sun-dried and bleached. And I've seen pictures of people like this, looking at 100-year-old pictures online. If you type it in, old farmer overalls, they'll come up by the thousands. Now, these guys was very much like my grandfather. Was a hard dirt farmer. He had a general sense of the Bible, the Word of God, just like we all do from things we hear. And thank God there's enough Bible thumpers out there to quote out Scripture that we can all let saturate in over our lives and eventually become to a help. But he had the general sense of God. But he didn't know much about what the Nephilim might have meant and mentioned in the Bible. Didn't care. Didn't pertain to him. Wasn't in his time. Nowadays, if you look up the Nephilim or Nephilim, there's a lot of ways to say it. The fallen ones that the Bible talks about, people equate that to modern day UFO craft and visitors from other planets or people that live in space and things like that. You know, today, there's tons of information. Probably 90% of it wrong. That don't matter. The information is there for you to sift through and discern. But back in the old days, there was no information. There was no Roswell, Mexico. Wasn't anything special about Roswell, till 100 years back. But that knowledge that young people have today can get them to draw a completely different conclusion of what somebody say, like my grandfather, his conclusion he would have drew about it. Information's it's a deep well. But anyway, I noticed in these young people, many of them, self-included, because I was young once when the internet was just starting, not young, but I didn't have so much white hair in my beard. But you can follow these informations and these ideologies and ideas of other men about what they were, to the point it kind of makes you sick inside. It can negate the purpose and reason of the Spirit of the Lord and what your purpose on this earth is. After all my searching, I've come to realize this is basically a rescue mission. Well, you can argue all day about the gap theory, and you can prove it wrong. Other people can prove it right. I find it proof's basically a whore. She'll go with whoever pays her attention. If you pay knowledges or ideas your attention, you can make proof bend either way. And everybody thinks they got the real truth, and everybody thinks they got the truth. Is that truth is different to different people, because it is what they shape it and what they make it. It's what makes you feel good. It's what makes you feel secure, is what most people do with their attention. And this is what the old guy in the overalls, dirt farmer 100 years ago, it's what he did. He didn't have to look off into spacely things or things of that nature to feel good. He felt good by planting his garden, feeding his family, making sure his kids didn't grow up murderers and thieves. Society was better for this outlook, and the individuals were better for it too, I think. Did those people that didn't have this technology today, did they have a chance to go to heaven or escape this rock, this earthly rock? Wouldn't it be very unfair if people since the dawn of the internet all the way back to the beginning of time, for them not to have a chance to have a good spiritual outcome at the end of this earthly life because they didn't have internet? The answer has to be way before internet, before all the massive knowledge was all compiled to give us all these ideas and ways of thinking. I went pretty far down what the world has coined the phrase of the rabbit hole. And I was lucky enough to come out with my tail feathers. A lot of people aren't. A lot of people are forever changed. And some of them end up worshiping Lucifer, convinced that Lucifer is the light bearer and he's the true God and Jesus is the Antichrist. You can get pretty deep in that rabbit hole if you're not careful. And if you ever dare to go in that rabbit hole, you better go in there vested with the love of Christ. And it better be strong enough to carry you past their proofs, because their proofs are pretty convincing. That being said, the guy's question got me thinking about young people and how their perceptions are so different about the Spirit of God. And old people, how their ways are kind of set and old, and which one's better for their experience, or is one better for their experience? I have to say, I don't really know that either one or the other is better over the other one. But every man for his time, and the times seem to be colliding. Some years ago, a man by the name of Lance Knight went through an experience that he coined the phrase as being the fire, and that comes from God referring to himself in the Bible as a fire in different places, and an all-consuming fire. This fire kind of burns away man's ill conceptions and brings him to a much more pure form of truth. I got interested in a man because he used to study with a man that I did called Pastor Murray at Shepherd's Chapel, which is a wonderful old gentleman that you can probably see on any TV now today. The program still airs, and I advise every young person to take a look at that no glitter, no shiny, no glitz and glamour, old-timey Bible studying hour that comes on every day. It's probably the best run in the ladder you're ever going to come across that will get you to runners to get up to where we're going. This is Jacob's ladder I'm talking about, that souls go up and down. Up and down is an important mention of that ladder. It can take you down just like it can take you up. But we both studied the same guy, and then all of a sudden one day, old Lance Knight, he came out with a few words that shook the whole Pastor Murray pupil student world. Had us all going nuts there for a few days, or at least I was, because I was willing to go in with an open mind and try to find out what would make him say that Pastor Murray was like an antichrist. And I never heard the tape where he said that. This is what other students were saying, and I knew I was listening to both of them at the time. Lance had a church, a sizable number at the time. So I got interested in this fire. It took me years of piecing together and praying to God that I could come to the understanding of somewhat what happened with this seemingly train wreck that happened, and come to find out I caught fire. And he wasn't really saying that Pastor Murray was Antichrist any more than he was saying we're all Antichrist in a way. No matter what we do, or no matter what we preach about or teach about, or it's always going to be flesh part involved, and that makes us that tree of good and evil, this inner self. Can't you feel that in yourself? That sometimes we're praying or maybe going to church and we're thinking real holier than thou, and next thing you know, we're off. I don't want to be vulgar or ugly, but let's go there because I think it's necessary. Next day we're off in New Orleans, and we're there for the Mardi Gras celebrations, and we tell ourselves it's going to be a nice time there. And while you're in the Mardi Gras, you're standing around looking at people puking in the ditch, and human crap has got the streets always shiny. You ever notice in Mardi Gras the streets are always wet, no matter if it's raining or dry? Well, the streets are wet because there's so many people overwhelming the toilets. The sewage backs up on the street, and you can actually see in the water drains in the streets toilet paper and turds and vile, filthy things floating up out of those drains, and the people are just walking on it, constantly tracking it all the way down the street. Well, when you pass the drains, you don't see the crap, but when you're in the streets, it just looks beautifully shiny. I remember one time there watching a girl catch some beads, and she dropped them, didn't catch them, and they hit the ground. And then she grabbed the beads up, picked up at the man, and threw it to her from up top, and she licked it, all sexy like, thinking, trying to be she's sexy. And I'm thinking, this girl does not know she's licking sewage. Now I can imagine this girl, not a bad girl. She didn't look like a bad sort or an evil sort. Just looked like any housewife going down to New Orleans to have fun. That's that good and evil. We don't go to Mardi Gras to have fun. We go to Mardi Gras to take part in evil. We can tell ourselves, fight with our consciousness all day long about how there's nothing wrong with one beer, there's nothing wrong with Mardi Gras, there's nothing wrong with this infidelity problem, only did it once in 30 years. We tell ourselves all kind of things to make sure we have the ability to be evil. I digress, but you get my point. The process of coming to God is an easy one, but we tend to make it highly complicated. We tend to want to get involved in the nuts and bolts of how God works, and where was God's origin, and where did God come from, and how did this thing happen? Because these are what we try to prove that God exists, to make us feel good. We think that if we can figure out the elevator, we can trust in its operation. And you can go down that road if you choose. But the old man, the old dirt farmer in the overalls, that's had a deep, hard faith in God, and he raised his kids right, and he lives as good as he can life, and he makes the right choices when they come to him in life. Is his value any less than the young person today that works so hard, tirelessly, trying to figure out the matrix of God? I've got to think God is fair. I've got to think fairness is like a big part of what God is comprised of. And I have to think that all these billions of souls that came before the internet age has just a bit as every good a chance as being judged and forgiven as anybody in now times of high data and technology and on into the future. I got to think the old dirt farmers got just as good a chance as these people. And I think this is what the forgiveness through Christ was about. No matter what you know, no matter what you don't know, no matter what you seem that you have to figure out so you can feel safe in the elevator ride, no matter any of this, forgiveness negates it all. And God, in His grand wisdom, has figured out a way, a highly technical way of doing that. We all have the ability to get forgiveness through Christ. We just simply have to have the good heart. Nothing to do with knowledge, nothing to do with how smart you are. You just have the good heart to ask for it, to partake in it. You don't have to understand everything. You don't have to stay up late nights worrying about the Nephilim or these things when they're happening, which is probably pretty close. These technical things that seem to be shading everything away from God and making us more and more ungodly the more we stay on the internet. It's harder to believe the more we stay sucked up and involved in Facebook and self-glorification, because this is what Facebook is. And most of the internet is. I'm not pointing the finger. I do it too. I'm on Facebook a great bit. It's part of my flesh weakenings and failings. I accept it. I simply ask for forgiveness for my failings, as I encourage everybody watching this video to do. No matter what they are, no matter if you know you have them or not, get forgiven for them. Well, this talk, I guess, is going on long enough for a little swing talk. If you got anything from this video, bless you and bless me. And I'm not talking about money. These videos aren't monetized, nor do I plan ever to monetize them. Money taints everything. Bless me with a comment, and if you talk to me, I'll try to talk to you back. This is how we grow. This is how we grow spirit. We communicate, we edify, we try to figure out things that are important, and we try to accept things on faith that are important. And this is one good thing about this pit of hell that we're looking through right now in this YouTube and this internet world. It's got everything in it. It don't have to be bad. There's a lot of good news if you look for it. If you look for bad news, good Lord knows you can find tons of that. It's everywhere. Every news channel, just about every other YouTube channel you come across is filled with the bad news. Oh, we're going to starve. The sun's getting close to the world. Global warming is going to kill the gardens. The Bible talks about this happening. This is nothing new. This happened back in Pharaoh's time when we had 7 years of drought. Weather turns hot every so often, like clockwork. It happens. It's bad news. But the good news is Christ did came. And Christ is there. Forgiveness is there for us. What do you want with these old flesh-worn and torn-out bodies anyway? They're no good for you. You have to leave this earth. You have to leave this dust behind. It's the spirit that's important. And this is what you need to get in shape. Not your brains, but your spirit. So do that, won't you? Partake in forgiveness and focus on the good. We got a lot of good news. Let's share some good news every once in a while. Make you feel better too. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap up this YouTube. It's a great day. It's a beautiful day, no matter what you see, and no matter how much bad news is out there. Let's not forget it. See you next time.